Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good morning. My name is Jose Marroquin, and I am the manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Society of Actuaries. Today, the SOA is partnering with the Network of Actuarial Women and Allies to bring you today's panel, Breaking Barriers, Navigating Mentorship and Leadership in the Actuarial Profession. Today's panel features Tanya Manning, DB Practice Leader and Chief Actuary at Gallagher, Manisha Diaz, as today is welcoming us, and Amanda Hug, who is a director of insurance consulting and technology at WTW and SOA president-elect. Now, I want to introduce the moderator for today's event, Cheryl Basha, NAWA board member and VP of Head Evaluation at TIA.
Thank you, Jose. I am so honored to be moderating today's panel discussion and representing the Network of Actuarial Women and Allies, also known as NAWA. I would like to extend a huge thank you to the SOA for being a founding sponsor of NAWA and co-hosting this event with us today. Also, thanks to our amazing group of panelists for joining us. I can't wait to hear from them. For those of you who may not be familiar with NAWA, our mission is to connect and empower women of all backgrounds, races, ethnicities, and life circumstances to be successful in the actuarial profession. Our foundational principles include increasing equity and representation of women in the actuarial profession, creating a sense of community among women, and providing opportunities for personal and professional development tailored towards women and our allies. NAWA has 5 impact committees that work collaboratively to advance NAWA's mission, support our foundational principles, and make a positive impact in the actuarial community. For example, our Community and Connections Committee is instrumental in developing programs that create a sense of community among our members, such as today's panel discussion and the annual meeting in November. I'm also so excited that we're able to revive the Learning and Development Committee this year and expand our mentorship program. I am confident that today's session will highlight the importance of mentorship, and I hope that it will inspire you to participate in NAWA's mentorship program. To become a member of NAWA, please visit our website at nawaactuaries.org. A few benefits of being a member include opportunities to develop your personal and professional skills, expand your network, and participate in an important effort impacting our profession. Best of all, it's free to join. In addition, for any listeners or companies who would like to discuss sponsorship opportunities, please reach out to the partnerships team on our website. We have a fantastic discussion planned for today on navigating leadership and mentorship, and we also have time allocated at the end for questions from the audience. To submit a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. So let's get the discussion started. Our first question for the panel is, who or what inspired you to be a leader? And when you began your career, did you envision that you would have a leadership role? Manisha, let's start with you on this one.
Thanks, Cheryl, and hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I was giving it some thought in terms of who or what. I don't really know if I had either, but I think, over the years, we start to figure out our preferences, likes, dislikes, and just what we gravitate toward, especially with each work experience, but even otherwise. And I think early on in my case, I just noticed my tendency of always wanting to understand the bigger picture. And with that was always what influenced the bigger picture and who influenced it. And so kind of early on, I just knew from the get-go that I wanted to be a key part of influencing the direction. I didn't know of what at the time, but I knew, whatever I pursued, it would be kind of in that way. And so with that natural curiosity and that gravitational pull toward the why, toward strategy, I always, whatever I chose to do, I tried to pursue it to a point where I was either able to lead it or contribute in a leadership capacity. And so, at age 17, doing some of this self-reflection work and realizing at a high level what I liked, I sought out people with interesting paths and unique jobs and leadership roles, and not even necessarily in the actuarial or insurance world, just kind of at large, and spent a lot of time listening to them, observing them, and trying to understand why they made the decisions they made and how they ended up where they did. And that was really my earliest form of receiving mentorship unknowingly. And it wasn't in this formal mentor-mentee capacity. It was really just listening to people and their journeys. There was one influential moment, which is it seems like a simple moment, but it played a big part on my life. And it was when I was doing an internship at Manulife early on, and there was a lunch and learn. They brought a senior leader who was an actuary who had a very atypical path, worked in a bunch of non-traditional roles, traditional roles, and ended up as a CFO. And it gave me an early opportunity of seeing what a nonlinear route could look like that had a successful outcome. So I chose to pursue different things in that way, and that particular experience shaped me wanting to move to different countries, try different functional areas. But really what it was doing was helping me form a bigger picture continuously with all sorts of different vantage points, and really trying to think from a leadership perspective long before moving into a leadership role.
Thanks, Manisha. Thanks for sharing your story. Same question, let's go to Amanda. Who or what inspired you to be a leader? And when you began your career, did you envision that you would have a leadership role?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on the panel, both with Tanya and Manisha, who I've intersected with over the last couple of years in different capacities. And I'm looking at the attendee list and recognize a lot of names as well. So it's great the community, NAWA and SOA are fostering here. I think in the question, did I think I would be a leader? I think the simple answer is yes. And, like Manisha, early in just kind of my life I have two younger sisters, and so always kind of took a leadership role with them. And then when I was in high school and college, I worked at a Christian overnight camp for many years and ended up kind of being the lead female counselor towards the end, kind of co-leading the staff of 60 or so, which was so fun and so different from what I do today. But I think I bring some of that camp spirit to my leadership style. I love team building. I love kind of pushing people outside of their comfort zone. So yeah, I think it was natural that I wanted to lead when I kind of stepped into business, and similar to Manisha, didn't know exactly what that would look like. But I thought, kind of an impactful moment for me around my SOA journey, and first running for the SOA board and then running for SOA president-elects, comes back to 2019. I was having a quick conversation with Andy Rallis, who was the president of the SOA at the time. And, I told him I've been volunteering with the SOA. I'm really enjoying it. Maybe I'll run for the board sometime down the road, like 10 years out or something like that. And he said, why 10 years out? Why don't you run now? And I said, well, Andy, kind of like, look around at the board. Do I really fit like the age demographic of the board right now? And he said, Amanda, that is the exact reason you should run now, is because your voice is different and you bring something unique to the table. And so, Andy wasn't like a mentor where we met once a month kind of thing and, had this ongoing relationship, but it was just a moment of mentorship to say, I see something in you that's valuable and different. And I think that that's really been a lesson for me, is it can be these quick moments where how can you empower your peers or your colleagues by recognizing something in them and encouraging them to take a step forward.
I love that phrase, moments of mentorship. I think I might steal that one. Tanya, let's go to you next.
All right. Hi, and thanks for including me in this group and allowing me to kind of share some of my thoughts. And my thoughts on this topic are a little bit different maybe than Manisha and Amanda. I certainly had no plan. I cannot emphasize enough, no plan at age 17. Even when I graduated from college, I kind of did not have a plan. I had a plan that had to get diverted I was going to get a master's or PhD, and I ended up just looking for a job. And that was the moment when I decided I wanted to be an actuary because they were going to give me a job. So I'm like, okay, actuary, that sounds great. But the more I got into the actual field, the more I just really loved it, and really loved working with actuaries. I just really love the profession and the connection of the business and the analytical and all the different aspects. So that was really fun. But did I think I was going to be a leader? No. I do remember in one of my summer jobs, the team were discussing how they're like, we're pretty sure we'll all be working for you someday, Tanya. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just show up and do my thing. But I think what has happened is not so much that I've always wanted to be a leader, but I've always had ideas. And I've had things of how I think things could be done better, or inspirations of where to lead groups or the profession or people or teams into, different ways of doing things or trying to make things better. That's what inspires me and gets me up every morning excited. Is like, how can we as a group do something different? Really make an impact and be different and be better. So that's how I sort of fell into the leadership role. I was a little bit like Amanda, I was a little bit of pushed, and similar to her, Chris Bone, who was the chief actuary for the firm I was working at the time, suggested that I run for the board for the Society of Actuaries. And similar to Amanda, I'm like, me really don't think that's quite the right time, but I went ahead and did it, and I was elected, and thus started my journey in a leadership role in the profession. And ever since then, it's just been so rewarding. But what I really like to do is to inspire other people to get the best out of the group as much as possible. And I guess if that makes me a leader, okay. Also, there was a little bit of determination coming up maybe in a different time in the profession to make sure that there was a female presence in the different groups that I was working with, and to not have any misunderstanding that women were not as equally capable. So that was sort of an inspiration for me as well, to kind of push myself forward in my career and to make sure that there was that space and that understanding that, yes, we will be there. We will have our fellowship. We will have our leadership roles. So that was a little bit of an inspiration too.
That, and I'll just jump in. That was an inspiration to me. So Tanya and I first met when I got my FSA in 2013, and she was president of the Society of Actuaries. And I remember being just so delighted that it was a female that I got to take my picture with and like kind of have for all time. And so Tanya's on my list of, inspirational women as well.
I always feel a little sad I'm stuck in your picture forever. I hope it was a good picture, Amanda. I
No,
don't know.
it's awesome. I love it.
Good. Great. Thank you all for sharing your experiences on how you got to where you are today. So moving on to the next question, from your perspective, what role does mentorship play in empowering women in the workplace? Manisha, let's start again with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think mentorship can really be a defining factor for women in the workplace, but also at all ages. And I think it's easy for people to think that it's only something that should apply early on, or when you're a student or you're entry level. But I think kind of arguably it becomes even more important as you advance in your career, and especially in leadership roles, because you're chartering new terrain oftentimes. So maybe three buckets or three roles that I think it can serve well. Ones I particularly like. So there's that role modeling and networking aspect. So really just for someone to see the art of the possible plays a big part, right? And just to hear the path of another person who either is in a role they want to do, or becomes inspiration of something they want to do. And I think there's a lot that we take for granted based on just our natural strengths or the paths we took. Oftentimes we're like, oh, well, this piece of info may not be worth sharing. What does it matter? But to another person, that information can really change the trajectory of their career. Like sometimes you receive a note 10 years later from someone from a coffee chat you did, or a presentation, or whatever it was. And and they say, hey, like, this really influenced what I decided to pursue. And so all those things I think really make it worth it. And so mentors can really serve that function. And then on the networking side, not only are you networking with that mentor, you also gain access to their network. You may have mentors that naturally do that. I try to always connect people with anyone I think might be helpful for them. But in the event that doesn't happen, it's always, a mentee can always reach out and go, hey, are there maybe 3 people you think I should meet that can help broaden my mind or in a path I want to pursue? And so that gives you access then to another network and another network, and there's an amplification effect that happens there. The next bucket that I think is critical with mentorship is navigating challenges. And so there's no challenges shortage in a workplace to navigate, whether it's figuring out team dynamics or internal politics, or even simply like, hey, what role should I do next within the organization or otherwise? And then there's navigating that as a woman. And depending on the woman, that may or may not be a very, very challenging factor to then navigate these things with. So just to have someone to bounce these things off of, or to hear from someone else similar scenarios that they encountered, or even somewhat adjacent, so you can kind of build up different tools or skills, or figure out how you want to tackle those scenarios. Those things all go a long way, and that personally helped me a lot. Because each year, each role, there's always new challenges. And so just listening to people and how they handle things, I found has been, golden nuggets that always come about. And then lastly, with mentorship, my favorite part is the confidence building that can come. I think it's so easy as a third-party objective person when talking to someone to see how incredible they are, to see their strengths, to see like, oh, wow, they could do this, this, this based on, what they have today. But oftentimes that individual doesn't have that lens, sadly. And so having a mentor who can tease that out, make it really abundantly clear, and go, hey, sometimes that is the push someone needs to go after something when they didn't have the confidence to do it. So I think that's something very powerful we can do both as women and as mentors.
Thanks, Manisha. Great advice. Lots of good nuggets there. Amanda, why don't we go to you next on the same question?
Yeah, just want to tack on one thing Manisha said that sparked a memory for me is the power of networking, and the fact that one of the things when you're networking is it doesn't necessarily, I used to think like I need to go really deep with every person that I meet, right? Because that's kind of how I operate in my personal life, is I have like a couple of really close friends. But I took a class as part of my MBA at Chicago Booth, and they talked about the fact that it's actually the loose ties, like the people you've met once or twice in passing that like 3 years down the road, maybe you could make another connection with them over something different. Those are the people that actually accelerate your career progress. And so I guess I would challenge you, like when you're networking and meeting with people, like think broad, which maybe for women is not necessarily the natural tendency. So I think mentorship is important. I'll take this in a slightly different direction and say that I actually think sponsorship and friendship are maybe even more important. Sponsorship just in the sense that you need someone who's going to advocate for you when you're not in the room. At the end of the day, like so many decisions are made about us and our careers without us being able to come to the table and like raise our hand or say we want to do something. And so having that person who's going to be that voice for you. And I recall early in my career, I was like, I think just getting my FSA, and my manager was like, yeah, we had like a leadership meeting and my boss brought up your name and no one really knew who you were. And a smile came over his face and he said, someday you're all going to be working for her. And I was like, so touched that like he would say that. And I didn't even have a close relationship with him, but he had heard that I did good work and was putting sort of his political capital out there for me. So finding the people who will do that for you, I think, is really important. And then finding those friendships as well. I tacking on again to what Manisha said, sometimes I find that women do still struggle with this imposter syndrome, and I'm certainly not immune to that. And so I have, 2 really close friends in actuarial circles that I kind of go to when I'm questioning myself, as they'll be the ones that will have the confidence for me when I don't have it. And so I recall when I first got elected as president-elect, I was thrilled and so excited and so honored, and also thinking about the fact that I'm the youngest president-elect in SOA history. And I was almost saying, like, did they really know what they got into or getting themselves into? And my friends were like, Amanda, the members elected you. Like, they read your bio, they knew what they were getting, and they voted for you. So like, don't doubt yourself. And I really like have not looked back since that. And I've kind of stepped into the role and I'm like, yes, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is the moment that the SOA is in, and people are excited about that. And I can kind of own that now. And so I think just finding those people who will really build you up when you're not so sure about yourself.
Amanda, if I can just add quickly, I think also finding those people who will be honest with you. You need that real advice. I call it my tribe or your friends, and they'll be like, maybe less of that and more of this, and they'll give you that really honest, only a friend will tell you kind of advice. But I so agree with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, great, love it. Tana, let's move on and take the next question for you. In your time with the actuarial profession, have you observed specific opportunities or challenges for women, and how do you navigate them?
So I definitely observed some challenges early on when there were not that many women who were in the field and who were fellow actuaries, and certainly not in leadership roles. But I work in consulting, so my job always entails going and meeting with clients, or even internal meetings. This would apply. But when you show up as the female or as the woman, um, it's often you have to prove that you are capable. Men walk into the room and very often, and this is, a broad brush, but very often it's just assumed that they're qualified, and you're going to sit back and just see how qualified or what they have to say. When women walk in the room, you have a little bit of an extra jump or barrier or step that you have to take, that you have to prove that you are appropriate and qualified and skilled and able to do whatever task is before you. So that was always a little bit of an extra, and that makes for a very tricky situation, because then you're put toward proving that you're capable without going too far and proving that you're capable, if you know what I mean. So it was a really tricky thing to navigate, but you always knew when you walked into the room that you were having to kind of level set and say, here I am, and here's what I know, but doing it in a way that wasn't offensive or over too much of that. That's changed over time because there is more representation and there are more women in leadership roles, and it's much more accepted and normal. It's not where it needs to be by any means, but that part aspect has gotten a little bit easier. I look at the leaderships for the actuarial organizations in themselves. It used to be the only one or one of few to now more than the over the average or more than half. That is really refreshing. And now people will look at Amanda and Manisha and others and say, yeah, okay, you're here, and let's hear what you have to say, instead of let's make sure that they know what they're doing. So that's just been the most refreshing change in the profession, and I've been really happy to observe it.
Yeah, that's great. Not only to observe it, but to be a part of that change too, right? Amanda, same question. In your time with the actuarial profession, have you observed specific opportunities or challenges for women, and how do you navigate them?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about this from more of a looking forward perspective. So the SOA board is working on their strategic plan this year, which will guide us for the next kind of 3 years or so. And so one of the things we're spending a lot of time on is artificial intelligence, and how is that going to impact the profession? How's that going to impact the work that we do? How will it impact the SOA? And so we're doing a lot of training because, frankly, we're not experts, and we need to make these decisions in a knowledgeable way. And so recently we were listening to a talk by Salim Ismail. He's a speaker in Silicon Valley. He talks about disruptive technology, and he talks about artificial intelligence as kind of this shift from scarcity to abundance. So historically we were working under kind of this scarcity mindset, and now with the proliferation of data and the internet and connectivity, like, we're really in an abundance, and it's how do you cultivate and cull down that to something meaningful. And I thought it was so interesting, and this is again a bit of a gender stereotype here, but he talks about how moving from scarcity to abundance, you need to move from a male archetype of leadership, which is more of a command and control style, to a female archetype of leadership, which is more collaborative and more peer-to-peer. And, he says that it's not effective to manage abundance with this command and control mindset. If you think about the open source movement, if you think about the internet and, how Reddit and how people are connecting all over the globe on different things and sharing information. And so I thought that that was so cool. Again, not all females are collaborative leaders and not all males are command and control leaders, but that it's opening up this space for potentially this new style of leadership to come in. And that, I think, can have a lot of benefits for women.
And I think that during COVID, it kind of brought to the forefront, Amanda, a different type of leadership that I think plays to a lot of the strengths that many women have to begin with. And coming out of that, things haven't really changed. And I think the new generation wants to have a different style of leader. And it isn't so much alpha male as empathetic and someone relatable. So I totally agree. I think it's a different place that maybe because more women are in the workplace, but or maybe because more women are expected to be in leadership roles, and it's definitely for the better.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Manisha for our next question. How can actuarial organizations continue to foster a more inclusive environment for women, particularly in leadership roles?
Yeah, so I think there's all the usual items that are getting more focus on now. So things like mentorship and sponsorship. So some companies will have formal programs, which is great. Some might have unofficial, some haven't thought about it yet. Hopefully they will. And then there's things like having leadership training being offered, whether it's internally or having financial support so that people can do side training programs and courses. But some of the ones I wanted to hit on, which I think can go a long way, are ones that are kind of speak to me a bit more. So one of them is really trying to celebrate diversity and inclusion, just like in a very all-encompassing way. And so that's especially in an actuarial organization that is recognizing, celebrating, showcasing, all the achievements and contributions of the female leaders there, especially the women actuaries, ones who are maybe not yet in their leadership arc, and then ones in it. And also hitting on a bit of who they are overall, not just the contributions. So to Tanya and Amanda's point, obviously the pandemic shifted things, including most of the time our backgrounds, that we are human, that we have families, lives, all of that. And so that human nature is what tends to be really inspiring to others. So bringing that into it is great. In terms of how companies can do this, there's different ways, right? There's outwardly on LinkedIn, you can do internally on a bulletin board, whether it's virtual or not, the intranet. And then it can be as simple as doing shout outs and team meetings and town halls. Where this isn't a part of a company's regular practice, it takes some getting used to. It takes doing it at a team level, kind of a bottom up approach. But at a certain point, that can really just become part of the culture, and then you can rally a lot of excitement around it because it's good energy at the end of the day, and so people like contagious positive energy. Then the other thing that, especially for female leaders or ones who are approaching that kind of leadership tranche, is really encouraging participation more in the industry and in committees and in leadership forums. This is one where I found has a pretty high barrier to entry for a person individually. Like I get questions a lot of the time of like, hey, I want to be in a panel. How do I approach it? How do I get invited? How can I speak in a conference? Like, I don't know what I would talk about, a lot of that. And so I think for organizations, something that is really helpful is actively mining a roster of possible speakers, looking at it often and not having it be stale, and making sure it has good representation, both in terms of gender diversity, also age diversity. And a lot of that means you might need to volunteer a person. And so I volunteer people a lot, but I always try to offer a lot of support and give them the option if they don't want to. But sometimes you can just start someone off with a light touch way of moderating or supporting behind the scenes or joining a committee and maybe not chairing it, for example. But those things get people sort of used to that external world, and then they can build up the confidence to take on bigger and bigger roles externally. And it really helps with their external leadership, which is important for companies too. And then I think lastly, what organizations can do is this like concept of like clear career chartering. So chartering paths, but also optionality. So just because someone is maybe a pricing actuary in a role, it does not mean that like head of pricing is the only option that they can pursue. And sometimes it takes others, whether it's managers or sponsors at an organization, to show someone, hey, with these skills you've accrued here, you can also do this and this, or you might take this path. And so a lot of the time when I mentor people or people who are on my teams, I'm like, hey, you could do this down the line, you could do this, you could do that, and really giving people ideas that they haven't contemplated helps broaden the mind, shaping their thinking and how they might approach the next thing. So I think those things can all help with helping women in leadership, and especially just creating a culture of a growth mindset, gaining new skills, and not being scared to step out of the comfort zone, because you sort of make it a norm by talking about it often.
Great. Thanks, Manisha. And I'll just piggyback on one thing you said. I know that at NAWA, we really have a lot of opportunities for people to get involved with, hosting panels or organizing panels, speaking at different events. So if you have any mentees that you want to send our way, we'd love to have them at NAWA. And we're even thinking of putting together that list of speakers within our organization that we can call upon and have at different industry events. So great ideas there. Amanda, let's move along to you. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, one example, I think actuarial organizations is like sponsorship of things like NAWA, right? And so we're committed to that because we think it's important. I think the SOA recently, we've been hosting book clubs, which people have been getting into. And I think there was recently a book about kind of gender diversity and how inclusiveness for women. I can't recall the title off the top of my head. And so just doing kind of small things like that to create spaces for conversation, I think is helpful. I'll give one like super practical example. So on the SOA board, like Tanya alluded to, so a third of our members are female and 2/3 of the board is female. So we have great representation as far as gender goes on the board. And one of the things that I found over my career is, in meetings when you're trying to break in, sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge, right? And there's a little bit of a culture of talking over one another to get the next word in. And so for women maybe who don't feel as comfortable interrupting, sometimes that can be a challenge, or really anyone who doesn't feel comfortable interrupting. And so at the board, we have like this very official system where instead of just an open forum where people are chiming in and almost like the loudest voices get heard first, we have name cards, and we just literally like raise our name card when we want to speak. And then the chair of the board will usually call on those in order that they were raised. And so it's like a really low stakes entry to the conversation. And I think that makes it really easy for people to speak, and not just females, frankly, but like we know a lot of actuaries are introverts. And I recently read Susan Cain's book, The Power of Quiet, and I'm just thinking about how do we harness the power of introverts who maybe need a little bit more time to think before joining in the discussion. And so something that you can really practically do if you're the one leading a meeting and you're going to have different leadership styles or contribution styles at the table is just use the raise hand functionality. Like, it's so simple. It's built right into our technology. And then you almost level the playing field and say, all voices matter, not just the ones who feel strongest about breaking in.
Love it.
And if I can just add to that, because I love that, and it's definitely true. You can see it more, especially in virtual calls where everyone's in this sort of level playing field, that sometimes people are thinking and they have something they want to say, and so in the event that the raise hand isn't used, I think even as women who are in that meeting, if you notice it, right, being taking that role within the meeting of being able to see that and go, hey, I think Amanda wanted to say something, so that she doesn't get passed over just because someone else is more dominating, or people think and process and speak faster than others. So I try to do that wherever I see it, but I think it's a small thing we can all do whenever we notice it.
It's that element of, you've got people to the table now, how do you include them in the discussion? And sometimes it's also understanding and have the meetings before the meetings, which I've gotten better at the longer I've been part of these groups, and understanding what people's perspectives are and asking them to share them if you feel they're important, because sometimes they may not recognize the importance if they're earlier in their career, or maybe feel like they are just a guest in the group, not part of the group, and figuring out how to do that. And also just understanding cultural differences that can amplify these needs, to understand how to best integrate them. But I like that, different contribution styles. I'm going to remember that. I think that's, we always talk about different leadership styles, but there's different contribution styles. And it's easy to assume everyone is going to be like me and just be very willing to interrupt and talk loudly to get into the conversation, but not everyone is like that. And so to watch those raised hands and be respectful. I like that. Good conversation.
Great. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to give a reminder that we will be taking questions from the audience in about five minutes. To submit a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. So next question, Tanya, let's start with you on this one. How do you envision the future of women in your industry, and what steps can be taken to accelerate progress?
So we have a lot to do as far as women's representation in the industry. We talked about our representation in the profession, and I will keep talking about and rejoicing over the way the SOA board looks currently, because it's so exciting for me. But when we get into the industry and we look at the C-suite particularly, we are not there, and we have more work to be done. And groups like NAWA and the other groups that are supporting women and just the personal networks, women supporting and putting forth women and supporting women is really what we're going to do. But the biggest thing that we need to understand is, as an industry, we are not going to be successful if we do not appropriately recognize the women who are the buyers and users and stakeholders of our service and what we're bringing to the table as actuaries. It is no longer the buyer is just the man who's the CFO or CEO or whatever. You have to understand that the buyers and the people who need the insurance, who need your advice on retirement services and plan designs for retirement programs or health services, the buyers are becoming more diverse, and therefore our people who are developing and serving those clients and the users of our services and products need to be representative. How can you be the best profession when you're not understanding and serving the people who need you? And that also gets not just beyond gender diversity, but all levels of diversity, and looking at the different parts on a global basis. If we really want to be a global, strong profession, we have to understand that there is a global world out there, and we need to include and have more diverse people who are thinking about how to lead our products and services in that direction. We are moving there, and I think we're getting good feedback that this is what we need to do. But even going into the different products and thinking about ways we can customize them and maybe adjust them so that they work better for women. I work in the retirement industry, so that's something I'm very close to. But thinking about the way that we design our retirement programs, from the US level to the retirement program for your employees, does it really recognize and understand the way that women progress in their career, and how very often still women are the ones who are taking a break when they have to step back for having and raising children or that type of thing. We have to kind of understand that women have different needs and they progress differently in their career. Are we really recognizing that in the way that we're designing these products and services and supporting them, and also how we're integrating them into the industry for leadership roles? Do we understand that this is how their career progressed, and are we really accommodating that? So there's a lot that we can do, both in the way that we organize ourselves in the industry, but also the way that we present ourselves and our services.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. Manisha, how would you answer this question? How do you envision the future of women in your industry, and what steps can be taken to accelerate progress?
I just wanted to piggyback on something Tanya said about just designing things for women. So for anyone at a company that has company swag and company t-shirts, these are further from design for women as physically possible, and I always get a laugh out of it. In my recent former life, a lot of my team was women, and we were doing a workshop, so we're like, let's get shirts. And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna have women cut shirts for the women, the ones that are designed for men. And sorry, they just swim over it. So at Somerset, where I am now, and also leading the marketing function there, I'm like, I will not wear a shirt unless we have a women cut or just different cut. So I think it can apply to diversity. It can apply to the type of events that a company does. So things beyond golfing. I don't golf. I'd love to try, but just giving other options are really big. But I think to kind of back up and answer the question at large, The way I tend to think about what I'd love to see for future of women and this industry and even otherwise is really a world free of discrimination. And I come back to Gen Z a lot, and they catch so much flack all the time for all sorts of things. But something I've found with the many that I've interacted with is just how accepting they are of everything. Like, they do not care what color hair you have, what gender identity you are, what your sexual orientation is. They have good awareness on things like neurodiversity. And they just really value people who kind of have self-expression embraced to its fullest. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. So I think in general, as that generation starts to advance into the workplace and eventually in leadership roles, like, they're going to kill a lot of the discrimination that exists today. They have no tolerance for it. So that's great. But until then, we have a lot of work to do still to create this kind of future. So I think some steps to accelerate progress. There's unfortunately, like, we'll talk about women supporting women. And, I was talking about it with another woman the other day, and she's like, yeah, of course, that's there. And I'm like, no, unfortunately, it is not. It is not the norm. It was not there a lot in the past. It's not true of everyone, but women, grew up in the work world in environments where they did not have women supporting them. They were the only one having to fight for a seat at the table. And so, unfortunately, there are ones who are kind of scarred from bad scenarios and situations that happened in the past, and ones who it's not in their natural practice to support another. And we now live in a world where there are far more roles for women to do. So really, we shouldn't keep that similar perspective in the past, but it's just something we have to have a lot of intention towards. And I've seen it, unfortunately, too many times where woman moves into a certain role and kind of takes this sort of defensive protectionist mindset, and it doesn't help culturally with uplifting the other women. So I think for all women, being really intentional at showing other women that you support them, that you empower them, you give them credit, you give them kudos, you kill the notion of competition within a team, within a workplace. Those things go a long way, and we can all contribute and help with that. And then also, women have caretaking needs more than men do on average. And so outside of companies offering adequate maternity leave, there's still the issue of companies either not offering or having far too little paternal/spousal leave. And for ones that do, it's still not normalized for the partner to take the full amount. And so that makes it challenging, because then women still feel like they have to choose between family or career or give up a leadership role and all of these things. So the more we can normalize that, both partners take leave, they can split it up how they want, women can go back to work if they choose to. All of that goes a long way in just attracting more people into different kind of roles. And then lastly, it's just increasing representation in leadership roles, which companies try to do. But sometimes to make that happen is actually giving people the opportunity before they may even be ready. And that's taking a bet on people. And that's where sponsors can become really helpful. If you see someone's potential and they may not have the leadership experience yet, giving them that chance in maybe a bit of a low risk way and the support to make them succeed can make a world of difference. So I think those things can all help with the future for women in the industry.
Manisha, what you said about the women competing resonates so much with me when I am in a situation where I'm new to the team or a new woman is added to the team, that I'm actually very intentional about making sure that it doesn't digress into this competition situation. It's such a weird thing, but it really is there. And I'm really glad you brought that up. You can't just assume that other women are going to want to collaborate and support each other. For some reason, that doesn't always happen. And it can be really, really unhelpful and detrimental to the way that women are perceived and how productive we are. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that up and defending the Gen Zers. Because not only are they more accepting, but they're also demanding more transparency, which I will admit, but at the end of the day, that is lifting women up as far as having that more understanding and transparency of just pay, for example, and that type of thing. So great points. Thank you.
Yeah, all great points. Thank you to everybody. At this time, I think we'll be moving on to questions from the audience. We do have a few in the queue, And as a reminder to submit a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. So first audience question is, what skills should women gain to set themselves in a position to move forward in today's business and technological environment? Who would like to take this question?
I'll
Go ahead, Tanya.
start us off. I think women need to have this. I just got my internet connection is unstable, so let me know if that is a problem. But I think women need to, first of all, come to the table with the same skills that men have. But guess what? We do. So that is pretty much an affirmative. But I always say you have to kind of show up and you've got to deliver on the technical basis if you're an actuary and have the skills. But on top of that, I think you need to understand the way that if you want to have influence or be a leader, you need to present yourself maybe in a way that's the way that's interpreted appropriately. I don't say lose yourself, but I do think that women need to understand how to have a presence in the room and to come across as competent as they actually are. And I coach a lot of women. I'm like, if you show up to a meeting, you're not there to observe, you're there to participate. So push yourself. You can raise your hand and be included, but push yourself to be able to do that. Push yourself to have those strong negotiation skills, and try to all of these different skills to put yourself at an even playing field, but also just be quicker to act and more confident in the way that you approach things, and confident, even if you are internally confident, try to exhibit that confident. We did a book club on the book talking about women and confidence, and how women often don't have as much confidence, and even if they do, they exhibit it in a different way. So just be aware that your confidence is part of what distinguishes you and is a determinant in how far you progress in your career. So be prepared to exhibit, not just have that confidence, but also to exhibit it appropriately. Sorry if that was a little rambly, but I could say a lot more.
Great.
Honestly, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I think the actual literal skills that we need as women are exactly the same as men. We need to, we need to be good communicators. We need to be good technical actuaries. We need to understand whatever subject domain we're working in. But it is that confidence sort of pushes you to the next level and gives someone the confidence to pull you up to maybe something that you don't have all the skills yet, but you're going to step into it and you're going to learn. You have to almost like fake it till you make it, honestly, is sort of my mindset.
Two things to add, slightly different angles, maybe less skills, but things I found can be helpful in women moving forward, especially in business or in things that have innovation and tech. One is really courage. So, I mean, Tanya and Amanda hit on confidence, but this courage to try something out and know that, okay, if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. You can try something else. Fear holds women back so much from even the most incremental steps that you'd expect them to take. And so battling that is a real thing. And that's where having conversations with other women, other peers, mentors, and male mentors too. It doesn't just have to be women, but it's okay to try something, figure out, and then, try something else if it doesn't work out. I think the risk we view each step becomes too big in our head that it plagues us from even trying. And so you see it with jobs and all of those things. So that will always limit people. It'll limit them from trying something non-traditional. I did a non-traditional path as an actuary, so I get the question a lot. And people go, hey, how do I get into something non-traditional? And I'm like, honestly, half of it is just guts, guts knowing that, yeah, you might fail, but you've worked hard this far. You're going to make sure you're successful. And if it doesn't work out, you can always do something else. You can always move back to whatever company. And so that's big. And then the second one is more on this concept of limiting beliefs. And so I think the personal development side of things, like as we advance on our skills, our technical, non-technical skills at work, just actually doing the internal work to understand what our inner biases are and what beliefs we might have that are either causing self-sabotage and getting something we want in a role or preventing us from moving forward. So that requires different type of support, but I find that really, really helpful. Because a lot of the time I'm talking to women and they go, well, I could never do this because blah, blah, blah. So when you hear never enough times, there's a strong belief associated with that. And if you don't try to address it in different ways, it's going to prevent you in the long run, no matter what.
Manisha, do you think that courage is also related to women being more what I call rules followers? And so many times I'm working with a team and we're all asked to do a task and I like follow the rules and even follow rules that were in my head that weren't really even rules. And then the guys come to the table and they're like, well, I really need to do this. So I just went in this direction. And I think it's the courage to break the rules. It's a little bit part of what you're talking about, do you think?
Yeah, I think that, and then Amanda hit on it. The imposter syndrome is there too with the courage, and like I recently moved to Bermuda for a new role a few months ago, but I almost didn't go for it because I'm like, oh, I'm missing like 50% of the qualifications, and my husband's like, go for it. I mean, he was so just the male perspective there, and just seeing, whereas women, we all tend to be like, no, we need to have, this perfectionist mindset. We need to have everything. We follow rules, and there's this imposter syndrome. Those things really stifle courage, and then women miss out on so many really cool opportunities as a result. So you just need your tribe, and different perspectives to get you out of that.
Yeah, love that. Let's take another question for the audience. I think we might have time for one or two more. What are some ways that people who aren't necessarily in a leadership role with a seat at or near the table can influence positive advancement of women in our organization?
I can start. I think this is really just being, like we've talked about a little bit, being that friend to build other people up. And so maybe you're not the one who's handing out opportunities. Maybe you're not even feeling like you want to be handing out advice, but being there for a friend to listen to, being there to celebrate your friend's accomplishments, being there to suggest, like Manisha said, they should apply for the role. You can't understate the value of that friendship. And so, and they'll pay it forward, right? It goes both ways. And so I think that's a simple thing that you can do if you're not necessarily in a formal leadership role yet.
Yeah, I agree. And then just being that curious person, whether it's asking HR, whether it's asking managers, like, what do we have to help support women? Just by probing a question, even if you know something doesn't exist, they go, oh, yeah, and it can help brainstorm, and you can offer your suggestions. I think it's the people who are, before they're in a leadership role, ones who don't even realize that might be good leaders, like Tanya, you never had planned for it, but by simply asking questions and knowing that, any type of contribution, question, support that you offer can make a big difference and make it eventually culturally a norm. Those things go a long way. And then eventually that, as a byproduct of that, you end up having a seat at the table because you asked the question, you had the passion toward it, and you might end up leading that charge as a result.
And I would say if the company you work for does not have an employee support group per se, push to have one of those established. I did that at Buck. I was trying to do it on a small level and it ended up being this, first of all, across the US and now a global support group. And even though it's mostly women, it's also very visible to all people at all levels of the organization. They're doing some really cool stuff, like looking at, are our benefits appropriate? What is our data as far as diversity and advancement of women? So you don't have to be in a leadership role to kind of encourage that development and actively participate.
Thanks, everyone. All great advice. All great advice. So I think we have we have time for one more question from the audience. We talked a bit about, imposter syndrome, having confidence, getting confidence from our peers or advocates. How do you overcome imposter syndrome? This individual is in their first role out of university and is working in a non-diverse team, is asking the question.
Manisha, did you start this one?
I can share what I did to the extent it helped. Wasn't even really deliberate, but when I was starting out and with internships first in insurance companies, I didn't see myself differently, for just a bit more bold and brave. So I never thought, okay, I'm the youngest or minority or female, I just treated everyone equally, and I treated myself as an equal. And so I think as a result, I got treated equally too. I didn't limit myself. So those biases that, we were talking about a bit earlier weren't really there. So I tried to not create space for someone to go, oh, we should treat you differently as, because of how you look or how you think or talk. So if that's not there at the get-go, it's something that it's like that fake it till you make it. Can you try emulating and kind of demanding an equal playing field? So I've been on so many non-diverse teams, but I almost didn't notice it because I'm like, well, treating everyone the same. So that was a bit of what I did, to the extent it can help. But yeah, Tanya, would love your thoughts.
I was replying to someone who asked about the book on confidence. I think the imposter code was imposter syndrome. I think I'm a little bit older than my co-panelists, so no one explained this concept to me until later when I look back, and I'm like, totally experienced this. I used to think that people in leadership roles or at certain levels had some magical powers and knowledge that I didn't have, and how could I ever kind of get to that level. And as I started getting new roles, here's the tip for you: they do not. You know as much as they do. So it's just a matter of kind of each step that you take. Be observant and look around. Did they really, did you really belong there? Did you not hold your ground? Did you not know enough? Were you not ready? Yes, you were, Amanda. You were ready to be on the board and to be right. So observe as you go along in your journey and reflect on that and project that going forward. When you're in the next level, like Manisha, this next adventure, think about, I did this before. I thought I wasn't ready. I was ready. And there is no magical powers of these other people. You are, and people make smart decisions when they put people in roles that they put you there. They have confidence in you. You do that too. You're not an imposter. Women can do it, and you can do it. And just remember that as you go along, and every step you take will confirm that and get you there.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. Well, at this point, I think we're out of time for any more questions. I know there's a few more that came in that we will not, unfortunately, be able to get to today. I want to thank all of our panelists today, Amanda, Manisha, Tanya, for sharing your personal experiences and your advice. I know I have some nuggets that I'm going to take away from me for myself, and even just some terms that I liked, like moments of mentorship and different contribution styles. So things I'll take away. At this time I'll pass it on to Jose to close us out.
Thank you, Cheryl, for serving as today's moderator for this great webinar and panel. Special gratitude to the NAWA organization for this collaboration, as well as extreme gratitude to today's panel for sharing your perspectives and experiences. Finally, thank you to all the attendees for supporting this respective event, and we wish you a great rest of the day.